in Muggle history to come in and be like, wait a second.
I
They
think
probably
it
didn't as
depends
a
on, in my opinion, it depends on if they're paying for the service or not.
Yeah,
Because if they're paying for the service, then it's just like today getting a maid.
sure, that's fair.
So if they went
Totally
to the
fair.
rent a place for it, or they,
Yeah,
like,
I
rent a car.
I would venture to say Muggle born in general would be so little exposure that they wouldn't think about it and they would probably just hire a regular person unless they marry a wizard or a another wizard of any kind, because then you have household secrets, which is the thing about house elves that I get, is that you have household secrets in a magical world that you can't go to Merry Maids and just hire a muggle to clean your house.
do
Because
you think
they
there were
can't
Muggle cleaning people?
say that again.
Do you think there were Muggle cleaning people?
Not,
Yes, in our
I,
world, there are muggle cleaning people.
No, no,
no, she's
sorry,
talking about,
magical. In the magical world, do you think
Oh,
there were magical cleaning people? Because,
I,
like you said, you thought the Muggleborns would just hire someone, and I'm like, okay, but who?
that's what I
How are they
think they would
built
hire a muggle cleaning company
to clean their magical house?
if they did not marry. Okay, I said all this. If you did not marry another wizard and you didn't have a whole lot of magical things around, you
Okay,
would just hire a muggle cleaning service. But if you married another wizard and you have a very magical house, you can't. It's actually, to me, the only justification for why house elves exist. Because I don't think there are magical cleaning people, because it's been house elves for a millennia.
well, we know there's cleaning spells. Molly does them all.
Right. But
We know she taught Fleur some of them, which tells me Fleur's family probably had a house elf at some point, because why she
wouldn't
wouldn't.
they have some sort of like magical butler and maid or something?
Well, that's what I'm
Be
wondering.
but as you were saying before, they are not magically tied to keeping those secrets.
Exactly.
right.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
especially pure blood mean families who want to do, mean shit.
Well, we're going to get to Lucius in a second.
I'm
So my
ready.
I do think it's interesting because I do, we've had this fight before. I don't think I know
Discussion.
every pure blood is not rich because we have
discussion.
the Weasleys, but I do wonder, and this is just a weird thought I want to throw out there, and then we can talk about Lucius. Do you think once the Weasleys got money, Molly got a house elf and just hid it from Hermione?
No, I think she got a house elf and she paid her
Okay.
Cute. I
Okay.
like that.
because, which is really funny to me, because also this is the time frame when she was a complete empty nester.
Mm-hmm.
So she had plenty of time to finally clean. And then she went, but I don't want to.
And
Well, she had
then we're
grandchildren.
posed the question, how do house elves and ghouls interact?
Right. I'm thinking
Ooh.
that room just never got cleaned again.
I think they levitated it off the house and gave the ghoul his own, took the attic, gave it to the ghoul, and put it in a nice part of the garden where it could live.
Ghouls and gnomes and house elves just running around the yard.
Gave the ghoul the attic. It's fine.
So TC asked this question earlier, so I guess I'll ask it on air. Where do you think house elves came from?
So, okay, I definitely want you guys to answer this because that was fascinating because I went, they're just a different race. It's like a centaur or a mermaid or, it's just a different race of sentient beings.
Where did mermaids come from? I mean, you can ask this question about anything. It just happened to be house elves this week.
Well, but then we get into religion and the gardener and the guardian and like it depends on what you believe. Where did humans come from?
Okay. So I wrote my answer down. So like I said, I couldn't be
Please.
swayed. And
It'll
what
probably be more
was
succinct than mine was.
the house elf in my headcanon was a normal elf. that was a friend slash pet, whatever you want to consider it, to a wizard who was very lonely and ostracized from town. And he did experiments with potions to try to give, and this is very Pinocchio, to try to give his house elf pet human qualities so he would have a companion. And when the companion could finally talk and think on its own, it became so attached to him for making him a real boy that it got imprinted on his genetic makeup. So any elves that came from them always attached to their quote family. Yep, that's
Okay.
what I came up with.
I like it.
I like it. I want to believe it. I don't, but I want to. That's a much nicer than an entire race of enslaved. Like, yeah.
Well,
I
I
mean,
have a
we as humans are horrible, so we used that attachment to enslave them. But where
I
did it
can,
come
yeah,
from? That's where I came up with.
yeah,
well,
yeah,
I
yeah.
kind of okay. So peek behind the curtain. I was a brownie, as in the Girl Scouts brownies. Um, I was a girl brownie, and the brownies, and there's a story about the origin of the brownies. The brownies were a old, I think, German tale of these little small creatures that helped a cobbler by fixing all the shoes and cleaning up and making, doing things for the cobbler in the middle of the night. Like the cobbler just thought magically things were being fixed. And so my thought of house elves is they are like cousins to the brownies. And brownies, unfortunately, died out or went extinct. So there weren't these magical creatures helping anymore, but they had these ready-made cousins called elves who could be trained to do that. So as brownies were becoming more and more endangered, wizards started sort of training these other creatures that were like the brownies because they're cousins to take over, but they seemed to procreate faster than brownies did. And therefore, they kind of pulled the certain elves into the house to replace the brownies. And the rest of the elves are like wood elves and other elves that didn't get pulled in, and they created a special sect of elves that live with the house.
So that's one of the things that fascinates me about the idea of where did house elves come from, because they are very specifically referred to as house elves, and we do not interact with that type of species as not a house elf, as a forest elf, or as any kind of other elf. So I can see the, for lack of a better word, domestication of house elves being part of the story.
And just for the record, that was my question number 3 tonight. What other kind of elves are there?
We never see them. That doesn't mean they don't exist. We don't see a giant until the 7th book.
Well, not
So
only that, if you think about Fantastic Beasts, we had never seen 2 adults in a house doing things until we saw Queenie and her sister making dinner, cleaning up, washing clothes.
okay, I was wondering where that was going. So I was like, I remember a sex scene in Fantastic Beasts.
Sorry, no, ew. What I'm saying is there's
2 adults.
there's a lot of Wizarding World possibilities that we never saw because Harry hadn't yet seen it. That doesn't mean it didn't exist. So could there be other types of elves?
Okay.
Harry hasn't seen it, but wouldn't Hermione, in her quest for house elf liberation, have learned about other types of elves?
No, because she was all about the enslavement and she was focused on it. And one thing we know about Hermione's Ravenclaw quality to hyperfixate, that's where it is. I don't think she would. I think anything that said wood chopping elf would have literally rolled off her shoulders and kept going.
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to pull out a 100% geek answer. This is a nerd answer and I'm okay with it.
Hell yeah.
According to D&D, there are wood elves, high elves, dark elves, moon elves, aquatic elves, Dalek elves, shadow elves, blue rose elves, pallid elves, frost elves, gray elves, and painted elves. And there's other kinds of elves. But it got me thinking about all the different lore, including Lord of the Rings, where you have these human, like taller than human, skinny elves. So I do think there are all kinds of other elves. And these are the ones that just got pulled in and bred, and I hate using
Subjugated.
the term, subjugated and bred, like domesticated. I love that's a better word in many ways, into being house elves.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and accept it. I'll take it.
I only asked it because I do personally think there were. Like,
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think I'm thinking of not Ollivanders, but Flourish and Blots, where at the end of the night, do you pay your 2 employees to put away all the books, straighten up all the pens and the ink and the feathers and the quills, or do you call your house elf or your shop elf?
Oh no, that's going too far. I don't think there's specific elves for different like
And see, I
you know what? I take that back. I'm gonna immediately disagree with myself because I want a library elf.
and I'm thinking like there's farm elves, there's gardening elves. I think there's a lot of different. I personally think there's a lot of different type of elves. We only learned about the house elf because we needed to meet Dobby.
This is
But
gonna
all those
be
different
weird.
types of house elves are still defined by how they are related to wizards. Are there just like
Yeah.
wild
Well,
elves in the
so are
forest?
horses. So are
I think
horses
that
to
these
humans.
are, I think all the chores you mentioned are house elves with different duties. I don't think that they are different types of elves. House elves that are in charge of the stables, house elves
Now,
that are in
what I
charge.
mean,
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
kind of
mean
how I
that.
was thinking.
What I mean is, I think a house elf. There's
No,
some.
we know, but we're disagreeing with you.
I know, but I think when I think of house elves, because of the attachment to the family and the inability to hurt their family or and all that kind of stuff. Whereas I
Yeah.
think all of the other elves are free elves. And they can go get a job on a farm. They can go get a job in a shop. They can like there's something about the inbreeding, and I'm using that term on purpose, of house elves that makes them continue doing what they do. Because we have convinced ourselves, wizards that is, that they like this and that they choose this and
Yeah.
it makes them happy. But it could be because of their inbreeding. They don't really know anything else. They're not allowed out much.
This is going to sound weird, and I see what you're saying. I see your point. I think any elf that is helping wizards in that capacity is a house elf with a different duty. I think the other types of elves are other species of elves.
Okay.
But I see what you're saying. I see that. That's an interesting idea. I just think they're all house elves. Sorry, little Lupin wants to make his presence known. Apologies.
So those were my 3 main questions I had when this topic came up. And then I wanted to talk about Lucius, since we've now delved into how we feel about the elves. Let's talk about Lucius. Let's talk about
Which
oh, sorry.
Yes, we know how Mel feels about luscious loose. She put it to let's talk about sex.
Sorry, no,
yeah,
we're
right?
talking about Lucius,
Immediately.
not Jason. Lucius.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Evil incarnate.
Evil incarnate. Because we see a couple, because we could have chosen Barty Crouch or Hermione, but Lucius is first of all our first interaction with someone who owns a house elf and how they treat that house elf.
Mhm.
And it presents a very important aspect of the house elf, which is they have to keep the family secret.
Mhm.
And Lucius needed someone who would be subservient to him and all of his needs and not talk back and keep the family secret.
And not
But
talk about all the muggles buried in the backyard.
yeah, right. Do you think Narcissa brought a house elf into that marriage?
Yes, she was a black.
That's what I thought.
I would
So
say I think she
Dobby,